So, probably about 95% of the subject matter on this channel happens to cover the awesome worlds of DC and Marvel, but there are some other pretty cool heroes outside of these two universes that are also worth exploring. So here's that video, the top 10 superheroes outside Marvel and DC Comics. At number 10 is Captain Canuck. This guy has some notoriety in the Great North, but still remains one of the smaller heroes who many people still haven't heard of. Created by Comley Comics in Winnipeg in 1975, this Canadian hero basically has no affiliation to any other heroes, he's not part of any alliances, and doesn't exist in any other publications other than his own. His story takes place in the then future year of 1993, when Canada is the most powerful and wealthy country in the world. Sort of a Canadian pipe dream. And even then, the creators had a hard time keeping the story going, with the franchise being discontinued after only 15 issues. There have been other attempts at keeping the story going throughout the years, usually by demand of the small yet loyal fan base of the hero, but the most recent appearance that this hero has made was a web series that was crowdfunded back in 2013 by Smiley Guys Studios. Along with this series came a new publication of the comic, a new issue having come out as recently as 2015. But this was pretty much the first time Captain Canuck has made an appearance in 30 years. He sits further back on the list only because the character himself has a pretty forgettable power set and backstory. But I mean, he only had a short shelf life. I believe if he was given more time, he could have gained a lot more depth and gotten much more powerful. At number 9, we have Spawn. This guy's pretty well known in the comic book community, but some people may not realize that he's not actually part of the DC or Marvel universes. This character was actually originally published by Image Comics, first appearing in 1992 in the self-titled comic Spawn. This guy's story is pretty cool. He's originally a CIA agent named Al Simmons from Detroit, Michigan, who specializes as an assassin. And basically, after butting heads with his director at the CIA, he's betrayed during a mission and killed by said director. And he goes to hell, you know, cause of all the killing. But while he's down there, he makes a deal with a demon named Malebolgia that if he goes back to Earth as a Hellspawn and works his evil deeds on the human plane, he'll be able to see his wife one last time. So that's how he becomes Spawn, a super powerful, basically immortal anti-hero focused on taking down crime rings in the human world. At one point, Spawn actually appears in a crossover with Batman, and Batman unfortunately throws a ninja star at his face and splits it down the middle, rendering Spawn to appear in one of his more notable states known as Shoestring Spawn. Pretty nuts. Okay, at number 8, we've got Sailor Moon. Yes, I said Sailor Moon, fight me. Originally published by Kodansha Limited, Sailor Moon has superhuman powers, a human identity, Usagi Tsukino, and even a superhero alliance known as the Sailor Senshi. So yes, she is considered a superhero, I would say. Okay, originally from a civilization on the moon known as the Moon Kingdom, Usagi is reborn on Earth as the leader of the Sailor Senshi. Her powers are pretty extensive and she often avoids fighting, with most of her powers having attributes of moonlight, love, and healing. But this doesn't make her any less powerful. Her power set is pretty extensive. She manipulates supersonic waves for her attacks, uses powerful kicks, super healing, and uses her tiara as a boomerang, among many other abilities. Throughout the manga, she evolves into more and more powerful incarnations of Sailor Moon, known as Super Sailor Moon, Eternal Sailor Moon, Princess Serenity, and the Neo Queen Serenity, respectively. What makes Sailor Moon so unique and powerful is that she chooses to lead all her actions with love and understanding, even, and sometimes mostly, towards her enemies. She's great! Okay, at number 7 we have X. Part of the Dark Horse universe, X first appears in 1993 by publisher Dark Horse Comics. X has a pretty rocky past and grows into quite a powerful and determined anti-hero. Born an unnamed child, he is experimented on as a baby and abandoned after he is assumed dead in a fire. I know, and you thought your upbringing was tough. He later comes back to life somehow as a teenager with limited to no memory of his past, and he suddenly has powers. But this isn't enough to protect himself from being murdered again. Although this time, it's sorta his fault. He has an affair with a mob boss's wife. When he dies the second time, he comes back again as X, and his goals become to take out all the criminals and corrupt politicians he can get his hands on. This hero's weapons of choice are his pistols, but he's also a skilled swordsman and excels in hand-to-hand combat. I'm honestly rooting for this guy at this point. I mean, he didn't really have any chance at a stable life, so I wish him the best. Not that he needs it. Seems like he can take care of himself. Alright, at number 6 is Plastic Man. Originally published by Quality Comics, this hero was later acquired by DC Comics, but we'll just explore his pre-DC days since that's what this list is all about. First appearing in Police Comics number 1 in 1941, Plastic Man is more of a comedic character, known for his slapstick, offbeat adventures. But his origin actually explores a life of crime for his alter ego, Patrick Eel O'Brien. When he first gains his powers, it's after a failed bank robbery that leaves Eel with a bullet wound, lying on the ground, doused in a strange chemical liquid. He's nursed back to health by a monk at a monastery and learns that he's basically become the knockoff Reed Richards. He then goes off in a red and yellow costume with white goggles that hide his identity, and with him is his silly sidekick Woozy Winks, who has been estranged in his own way, but not from his former bank robbing partners, from the mental institution that he'd been ejected from. What's great about Plastic Man is that he isn't interested in justice or prosperity for good, he just wants to be rich. And Woozy Winks' goal is actually just to get back to that institution he was ejected from, or at least the safety of a padded room and a straitjacket. This story is just a fun time and shows the vast possibilities and uniqueness of independent comics. Alright, at number 5 we've got Invincible. Invincible was originally created as part of the Imagine universe by Imagine Comics. Born Mark Grayson, Invincible is actually the son of Omni-Man, and he basically gains his powers as a hereditary trait from his superpowered father. Invincible often finds himself faced off against aliens and sometimes teaming up with his father, who's also an alien, to get things done. Some of his abilities include super strength, flight, and of course, invulnerability. He has a very eventful run as a superhero, and if I were to cover everything he gets involved in, this section of the video would be 20 minutes long. Basically, this guy fights in a few wars, works for the government at one point, and starts a family of his own later in life. This hero is probably one of the most extensively explored straight-up superhero stories outside of the DC or Marvel universes, and his story is pretty great too. Although I don't think we'd expect anything less from the team that brought us The Walking Dead, would we? Check out Image Comics, they've got some good stuff out there, and it contends pretty well with Marvel and DC. And at number 4, I'm putting Midnighter by Valiant Comics. Started in 1988, Valiant pumped out some pretty good characters and storylines. And they were pretty ahead of their time too, with Midnighter being one of the earlier LGBTQ superheroes. I know Midnighter is part of DC now, but for a while there he was solely the property of Valiant. Midnighter, or Lucas Trent, is experimented on by Henry Bendix, who forms the Stormwatch team of which Midnighter is part. And his abilities are pretty extensive and really cool. He's able to run through almost infinite outcomes of any situation in his mind even before he makes a decision, making him one of the best strategists in the world. And looking at someone as powerful and influential as Captain America, strategy and tactics are always proven to be considered an extremely valuable asset. So I'd argue that Midnighter comes in as one of the most powerful on this list. On top of all that as well, Bendix's fight implants give Midnighter enhanced strength, speed, and durability. And the survival implants offer him enhanced healing, pain tolerance, and environmental adaptation. I just love how useful his powers are, and he just looks so cool as well. At number 3, we've got Shadowman. Shadowman is another creation by Valiant Comics, and he's also really cool and quite successful as an indie superhero. And he's a great example of how superheroes don't have to come from Marvel or DC to get their own sprawling franchise. I mean, Shadowman got his own video game, and Valiant has sold 5.3 million copies of his comics. That's pretty impressive for an indie comic book character. Okay, but what about the actual character himself? So, a young man, Jack Boniface, is born in New Orleans and at a young age is possessed by an extremely powerful voodoo spirit known as Shadow Loa, and his duty becomes to protect the world of the living from the world of the dead. Some of his abilities are basically a fearlessness to evil or danger, super strength and speed, as well as free passage to the world of the dead. What's really cool about this character is that the Shadow Loa, the source of his powers, is a hereditary entity that has followed his ancestors through history. So even when, spoiler alert, Jack dies, his spirit travels back in time and visits the others of his ancestors that had been possessed by Shadow Loa. Then he just wakes up in the present right after his own funeral and keeps going, armed with the understanding of his ancestors' past. It's a pretty cool storyline, and the character design is pretty awesome too. Alrighty, at number 2 we have the one and only Hellboy. We all know this one as well because of how successful the franchise has been. But going way back to 1993, the first appearance of Hellboy was by Dark Horse Comics, and he wasn't really expected to be much as a standalone character. But as his character progresses over the years, his backstory and personality are just so intriguing, and his appearance is so cool that he eventually captures the interest of the world. Hellboy is first introduced to Earth as a baby by Nazi occultists who summon him from hell. He's then raised by Professor Trevor Brutenholm, who starts the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, or the BPRD. So this combination of Hellboy's good nature with a stable human upbringing, mixed with his immense strength as a powerful demon from hell, it makes for a really cool, strong, and fun character. He's got his iconic look with his right arm made of stone, and his demon horns filed off, and that awesome gun he carries around. Some say he even smells like dry roasted peanuts, which actually isn't so bad. Hellboy is just a great character. A demon paranormal investigator who fights and witches. That's a pretty great recipe for story. And it's proven so, with the movies alone having grossed over $300 million. We all love Hellboy, come on. Okay, finally at number 1 we have Shazam. Another hero that eventually finds his home with DC, Shazam wasn't always part of that universe. He makes his start with Fawcett Comics in 1939. Yes, this guy has been around since the year after Superman was created. And it's pretty obvious but worth noting that his creation is sort of a response to the popularity of DC's Superman. But what's even crazier is that Shazam's original name was actually Captain Marvel. So Fawcett Comics was really trying to make their mark against Marvel and DC to the point where they were actually outselling Superman comics at one point with Shazam. So as expected, Fawcett was taken to court, and DC was able to sue them for damages. But beyond the lore of the inception of the character of Shazam, he's also just a great hero. And the fact that he's still around 90 years later with a bunch of new self-titled issues, tons of featured appearances in other DC comics, a hugely successful movie under his belt, and a sequel coming up is a testament to that. So yes, he's now a DC character, but there's a reason why he was such a hot commodity for DC back in the day. And we also know now that there is too a reason he seems eerily similar to Superman, and that's because he was designed that way. Pretty cool. Alright, that was a fun list, eh? Let me know if there was anyone you would have included who I missed. Put it all below in the comments and hit that thumbs up. Enjoy social media responsibly, but follow me on Instagram if you'd like, and Top 10 Nerd on Facebook if you're still on there. As always, I've been your host Ben Ball, and this has been Top 10 Nerd. Until next time, stay nerdy.